All right. So this next one, this was interesting. We won't get into some of the backstory, but you know where I'm going with this, Murph, too, because of the Southern California Gang Conference. But Ed is an interesting guy. It took us a while to get things arranged to get him on, but he goes from being a punk, in his own words. These are his own words. But he said to one of the most effective police forces ever in Baja, Mexico. But the problem was they were trying to get rid of bad cops. The cartel was getting involved, and then when he was given the choice to stay in a line with cartel or leave,
I mean, he
threw everything in a car and drove across the border.
Large
he wasn't going to stay there.
He's on the speaking circuit. He is hard to get a hold of. I don't know that it's him. I think it's the people that I don't know if he calls them an agent or a company that helps him with his speaking events, but they are very slow to respond, to be quite honest. Ed, if you're hearing this, I'm not sure that they're helping you out there, brother. But yeah, so
get off your ass and into the war, Ed. Come on, let's go.
Chop, chop. Unfortunately, we'd love to have him out there, but just didn't work out. But you got to, through his story, I mean, you got a really good look
didn't work out.
How
by God,
Mexican
you're
cops
be
operate in Mexico, because there's a hell of a lot of corruption down there.
And I'll tell you what, when we were talking about this just now, I had a quick flashback because we the wife and I rewatched Narcos, and then we watched Narcos Mexico. So, and then, you finish up in Narcos Mexico. There's this one cop, they're corrupt, but he gets involved in trying to track down girls that are being kidnapped. They're disappearing. And it's just when I saw this and I looked at that, I said, man, I see it. That they were, I mean, at least what Ed said, that's so accurate in the terms of the portrayal of what these guys were dealing with, you got the badge, you got the gun, you got the car, but responding to calls and arresting people. Such a schizophrenic life down there. Well, Murph, what comes after 119?
119, 120.
Well, that would be part 2, right? What comes after 119 and a half? Tim Cardwell.
Yeah.
Tim Cardwell, 120. It's not, dude, it's not a trick question. This
was, in this interview with Tim Tim got to be one of my best friends in North Carolina when I first got stationed there. And we didn't even get to talk about this one on case, but the first operation I worked with him, he stopped a guy and seized several hundred pounds of marijuana, and they wanted to do something with it. And so I got involved with it and did a historical case on it, and ended up locking up the folks in federal court. But from that, it just grew into a friendship, and we were always responsive to each other. We've remained friends in retirement here. He's now a big shot with the drug czars. So, but his story here, you remember he told the one about where he almost ended his career on the side of the highway.
Thanks to his canine, Lobo. Lobo saved his life.
Yep. The funny thing about that, Lobo was also a drug dog. I think Tim made more cases without his dog than he did with his dog. I mean, it's a really interesting interview about interdiction on the highways of America. Tim was one of the top interdiction officers in the country back during his day. If he wasn't number one, he was number 2. But I mean, he was right there at the top, and he continues to work with law enforcement today. So super.
And almost like it was tough trying to understand the accent between you and him. I was almost needing an interpreter for all of this stuff. What was that you saying again?
What the hell are you talking about, boy?
What you talking about, you knucklehead? Don't be a knucklehead.
Sorry. Tim is a big man.
Big man. Big John. Yep. Yeah, Big Bad John. All right, hey, 121. This is another buddy of yours. And, we stayed in touch on Facebook and stuff, but having him on. But again, here's another one of those where it's not just the story. I mean, he's former DEA all over the world. He was in Colombia helping chase some of the same guys that you were after. He started with the Sky Marshals, and he almost had his first skyjacking. But then Murph, even after all this shit, I'm going to take some downtime. I'm going to take a break. He goes on a cruise, and what happens? The cruise ship he's on gets hijacked by terrorists.
This guy, I don't know that I'd ever want to be partners with Mike, because, I mean, trouble just followed him everywhere. Holy cow.
It's kind of like, hey, Mike, where are you going this week? I'm going to L.A. Well, fine. I'm going to Miami. I'm staying that far away from you as I can.
But he has some great stuff. He was an agent down in Colombia. And you got to listen to the part where he talks about when he and his wife and child had moved to Bogota. And you kind of get used to hearing gunshots and things like that in an environment such as Colombia. And they were making that Christmas video to send home to their families, and they reviewed it. They didn't even realize there was a machine gun fire because they were so used to hearing it. They're like, well, I guess we better not.
Jingle bells, shotgun shells, grenades flying here. Boom.
That's right. That's right. But he's another one that I met I was a very young age. My senior partner was Gene Frankar in Miami. This was probably in 88, 89 when I met Mike Fredericks. And Gene, in his own right, was a legend within DEA, one of the smartest people, especially in law enforcement, I've ever met. And he'd introduced me to Mike, and we talked. And I think Mike was in the Bahamas at that time. And then when we did Mike's interview, he's like, I don't remember ever meeting you, Murph.
Like, another one. Who the...
I left a lasting impression.
Yeah, I filed a Freedom of Information Act to see if you actually ever worked at DEA, because nobody remembers you.
It probably came back all redacted, didn't it?
Yeah, redacted. Other than from West Virginia, that says it all.
There you go. There you go. But I mean, you want an adventurous story? You got to listen to Mike Fredericks.
Well, and another guy who's
no
got a book
involved in all that.
Yeah, another guy's got a book out there about, hunting cartel bosses. So that's all you guys. The other thing too is go look at our book list. Go to the website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. Go look at the book list and just look at all of the stuff that's out there. Some of it's fiction, some of it's nonfiction. Just freaking great stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Mike contacted me since we did his interview, and he said, listen, if you want me back, there's stories I haven't even told you yet. So I mean, this guy.
Yeah, it's almost like debriefing somebody who's a spy, or debriefing an informant. It's like we could spend 40 hours, 8 hours a day for 5 days, and still not get all the stories from these people. There's so much stuff to mine there.
Oh yeah, Mike talks about when he was in Colombia, they were out in the jungles. He was there during Tranquilandia, which was the huge cocaine lab that was discovered. Going in, people coming under fire. Living out in that kind of life, it was it was exciting.
Well, then we get into another story, and now he's able to talk about some of it. But Jim Lawler, interesting guy, the most unassuming guy, yet this guy worked for CIA for 25 years as a operations officer, was part of what they call the Senior Intelligence Service, senior, like the Senior Executive Service, SES, but the Clandestine Intelligence Service. He was a senior leader, for his last 7 years. But one of the things he did, you want to talk about what they do. So he was the chief of the AQCon nuclear takedown team, and they disrupted the most dangerous nuclear weapons network in history. AQCon was providing information, and they were able to disrupt that. You can disrupt cartels, get a load of coke, a couple tons, whatever else, and somebody's going to manufacture it. But nuclear weapons are on a different scale. When somebody deploys one of those, somebody drops a kilo of coke from the air, it hits the ground. What? But you drop a nuke, or you set off a nuke. I mean, real world, immediate consequences. So the fact that this was going on, so he's got his book called "In the Twinkling of an Eye" about the Iranian nuclear weapons program, and some stuff about the Russian, North Korean genetic bioweapons program. Here's the stuff you don't hear about again, right? You only hear about the failures, never the successes. And I remember, our fellow friend, Stephen Klaus, he tried for a long time to get into the historical section over at CIA to get them to tell some of their stories, because they have got so much stuff. And
I went with him to some of those meetings, and we kind of rehashed this when we were over in Micronesia here about a month ago. The fact that was so close, and then the guy that was orchestrating all of that for us and with us decided to retire, and the whole little program just passed away. But if you're interested to learn more about what the CIA really does, you're not going to learn means and methods. You're not going to get the inner secrets of what goes on in the CIA. But check out his book. Rick Prado's book is that thing is motivational because of what the dangers that these guys face, and they're just so unassuming. They're people that you look at and you'll probably never remember them.
That's the whole point. Jim Lawler is one of those guys, you'd walk by him, you probably wouldn't give him a second look, but yet I think he said he pretty much had 100% success rate on pitching people to work for Team America. And I think he said he had about 75 people that he pitched that he was able to successfully turn and have them work for Team America. So keeping and defending America from all enemies, foreign and domestic, I believe the oath says. God bless him.
God bless him.
Now, I got to tell you, this next one, we still have not taken him up on his offer to go to Alaska and get out on his houseboat. But anybody whose name is Rick Rambo is automatically going to get a repeat episode. Actually, not only that, but I think we made it 4 parts. This is our first 4-parter. There was just so much stuff here. We said, oh, my God, keep going.
This guy's just like an adventure that goes along. I mean, we did it all under episode 123, but there's 4 parts to it over 2 weeks. And there's still stories he didn't tell us. I mean, just the life that he led, grew up in the Midwest, comes on DEA, ends up in the Virgin Islands, and the excitement that he was going through down there. I mean, he had hit squads. He had to have he reinforced his own apartment to be a bunker because the gangs were after him and a Virgin Island police officer. And then he goes from the Virgin Islands all the way up to Alaska. I mean, talk about
him
change.
And Mark Cameron. We got to get these two into therapy and say, what the hell were you thinking? Going from St. Croix to Alaska. And then what does he do? He's out and about, having a walkabout, with his team, and he gets to shoot an 800-pound grizzly with the big fucking handgun. BFH.
I mean, you got to see the picture. Okay. If you haven't seen it on our website, go on Google and Google Rick. It's RIKK. And Rambo, common spell the bear.
Or just go to our website and use the search feature and pull it up instead. So don't give Google the ad revenue. Just keep it for us. Hey, we forgot, though, too, there is one picture Jim Lawler sent us that we put in there. He's sitting on $1 billion in gold.
Oh, yeah. What about that?
$1 billion, like Dr. Evil.
Yeah. Not million. Billion.
Billion.
Oh, my gosh.
Billion. So, and then...
Now, there's something you don't hear every day. You know what?
No.
Right.
$1 billion in gold. So, and then this one, we got some comments back on this one. We had Jillian Lauren. She wrote a book called Behold the Monster, Confronting America's Most Prolific Serial Killer, which was Samuel Little. Mm-hmm. This was an interesting episode, Murph, because I couldn't tell if she was engaging in recreational pharmaceuticals or, the use of alcohol. And we actually had several comments about this, like, what was up with her? She was interesting. And from a video standpoint, she was interesting. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to say too much. It was a bonus episode we put out there because Samuel Little was a serial killer and she had written a book, and it was, did somebody invited us to have her agents or something?
Yeah. One of her agents reached out to us, said, hey, would you mind having her on the podcast? Because, we carry a lot of weight and influence in the true crime community.
Oh yeah, between our 18.
Yeah, 22. Yeah. Oh, ooh. You can't count yourself and your family, Murph. So we're back down to 15.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. Well, but now, but this next episode we had with Michael Martinez, San Diego PD. I like this episode for a couple reasons. Number one, you get to hear about what people go through when the worst happens, which is, being involved in shootings. But he was very open about his abuse of alcohol, how it affected him. And what's something we've talked about for a long time, the hidden epidemic of police suicide and the things that affect people in law enforcement. It was taboo to talk about it. And this got us into a good discussion too about suicide, about mental health. And we had a lot of people ask about this. And so Michael, we did a 2-part episode with him. And he was involved in his first shooting within 8 months of joining. And then it just went from there. So he had 4 shootings in 2 years. That's kind of got to mess with you.
It does. And this was an introduction by our friend Mel Sosa out in San Diego. So thank you, Mel, for introducing Mike to us. What I really liked about Mike is he was so open. He didn't hold back. He told his personal situation. He told things that I'm sure he's not proud of. He told about almost losing his marriage. And now this has developed into a program where he helps other officers that are involved in shootings. And guess who's going to be one of the guest speakers?
You.
No, I'm not speaking this year. Well, I may do an interview like I did last year. I won't tell you who. I can't say who the person is yet. It's a secret. Well, I can tell
secret,
you, but
not on the recording. Okay. Well, okay. Pretend we're not recording. Just whisper it to me. Not yet. Okay. All right, and actually, Michael, we had so much stuff with him. We turned that into a 4-part as well, too. So that was good. That was a lot of content. And then we go to episode 125. You had something else before we go on to that?
I was just going to say that we know that we have a lot of law enforcement and military listeners. And when it comes to wellness for our first responders, that it's worthy of putting the extra episodes out there. We keep saying if you need help, don't think you have to go it alone. What is the national crisis number is 988. It's not 199 like our Patreon episodes. 988. If you need help, just call, get some help. And I love that. I just can't say enough about Mike. He really impressed me with his openness and transparency about his situation. So give it a shot. And if you need help.
Yep. Then we dive into, this is a referral from our buddy, Patrick O'Donnell, the Sarge of Cops and Writers podcast, which you and I have both been guests on. So we get Jack Barsky, and I'd listened to his podcast. Jack has a book out. Jack is a former what they call illegal in parlance, in intelligence terms, with Russian KGB, comrades.
Yeah.
You had legal residents and illegal residents. We would call them in CIA or U.S. terms, you'd have people operating under diplomatic cover or non-official cover. Mm-hmm. And non-official cover meant you were just out there twisting in the wind, baby. No diplomatic immunity, no cover. If you were caught, as they used to say in Mission Impossible, the agency will disavow any knowledge of you should you be captured or killed.
Yeah, this was one of the most. It was so different. Never in 1,000 years did I think we would have a former KGB spy on Game of Crimes. It was enlightening. It gave you a good idea of what he went through, what not only he experienced, but his family, multiple marriages, his children. You know, Jack was very, very open with his interview and gave you listening to his conversation and reading his book was like watching a spy movie on TV, but it's true.
And it was the inspiration for what was that show, The Americans, on television about the KGB illegals. So, and speaking of that too, Murph, I'll show you another challenge coin. Look at that, KGB challenge coin. Yeah. They have to find me first. I'm hiding in a secret location.
Call me. I'll give you his address.
It's in Orlando, Florida. It's in Orlando, Florida, by a lake with 2 alligators. All right. So, but anyway, Jack, again, and we thank you to Patrick for that introduction. So Jack was interesting. We did have one comment, though, I remember. Somebody said, well, he kind of sounds arrogant, and said, well, you don't want a shrinking violet when you're operating as an illegal for the KGB. You know, these are type A personalities. They know how to be, if they need to be a wallflower. They know how to be shy and retiring. But you got to have type A's. I mean, this guy is who he is. He didn't live the most perfect life. But again, if you don't learn from your adversaries, and now what the funny thing too is the FBI agent who arrested him, and turned him. These guys are friends. They still go out to dinner. They hang out. So,
it's crazy.
Daytime.
It's like a guy that we have not had on the show yet, but I hope to here maybe in the next year or so, Mel Chancey, who was the former president of the Hells Angels in Chicago. There's a movie being made about his life, and he has an agreement he can't do interviews until the movie comes out. But the guys that put him in jail were Chris from ATF.
Presser. Yeah.
Chrisser and Lou Velozzi and those guys, and they're all best friends. And it's amazing how you meet these criminals and then they become your buddies later on down the road. It was the same with Luis
Navia.
Yeah.
Luis Navia.
Yeah, he's friends with the DEA agent that arrested him down
with 26 tons of cocaine on a ship.
That's a little bit more than personal
26 tons.
use.
Just personal use, Your Honor. Of course, by my calculations, you're going to have to live to be the age of 972 years old. So, but hey, and we get our share of stars too. He's kind of like Lou Velozzi. He's eye candy for the ladies. Sean Styx Larkin was episode 126, and the funny part we always have to ask is, where did he get the name Styx from? Well, you have to listen to the episode, but basically it's like when he hopped out and was running without the proper backup, I think he got referred to by his training officer as a fuck stick.
Yeah. He had his own podcast show there at one time. It was called Cops and Cocktails. Javi and I met him. We were speaking at a conference out in Oklahoma with Mr. Stinnett he invited us, and that's where we first met Styx. And then when we did his interview, he's sitting, we do these interviews and we can see each other on video, but right now we're only recording the audio. And it looks like he's sitting in a liquor store.
And it's a bunker. If I'm gonna have to survive a nuclear fallout, I'm going into his bunker because he's got booze to last for the next decade.
Oh my gosh, there were hundreds of bottles in there. So he's become somewhat of a bourbon snob, I guess. Likes his bourbon. So it was an interesting interview because if you've seen remember Live PD and he was one of the hosts on that shows.
Yeah.
He when he retired from the police department, I think he was dating a young actress at some point. got to go to the Emmys or the Oscars or one of those. And he was big in the media world.
Well, and he's
nice
got
guy,
Crime
man.
Cam. He's got the show which we've watched. We're up current with his last episode on Crime Cam on Fox Nation. So they did season 2. So he's got that going. So
Nice.
Hey, he did well. It was he's done again. Another one of those people that's taken his job and turned it into something and done well. So episode 127, we met him and his partner, Michael and Rex, when we were out at the Southern California Game Conference. We got some pictures with them. They're in uniform there to get the award, but we ended up talking with Michael Collazo about the Covenant school shooting. And I'll tell you, what was very instructive about this was, number one, you and I talked about this, the difference between Uvalde and Covenant school shooting. Night and day. They should not only should they fucking fire people at Uvalde, some people should have been criminally charged for the way they failed to act and the way they failed to respond. But yet these guys, from shot to taking out the shooter, I think was 6 minutes or 6 or 7 minutes. I mean, these guys kicked ass. They did what they were supposed to do. And when you see the body cam, the other thing too, and I'm still getting goosebumps from thinking about this, was their fire discipline, their shot discipline. They only fired what they needed to fire until the threat was over. It wasn't this wild, 50 rounds, everybody getting involved. They took their training seriously on active shooter. And again, to this day, it's like I still get goosebumps when I think about talking with them about what was going through their heads, stepping over victims to go after the shooter.
And that's, we were going to have both of them on, and we met them at the Southern California Game Conference last year. Rex was not available because he was on his honeymoon. We were
narrow-minded. You should give him shit about that if you see him. You went on your honeymoon and gave up being on Game of Crimes podcast. What were you thinking?
What the heck? But you know what? Go back on, if you haven't, and I'm going to guess that most of our listeners have already seen the video of when they responded. But these are the guys that when you see the police officer opens the back of his SUV and he's grabbing his weapons and he's calling out, "Give me 3, let's go, let's go, let's go." That's how you do it. You take this job of law enforcement, of a first responder, to protect others. And nobody that I've ever met wants to run into a gun battle, but it could be required of you. And God bless those who make the ultimate sacrifice and give their lives for others. But when there are children and innocent lives at stake, that's when you got to suck it up, Cupcake, and get in there and do your damn job. And boy, did these guys do it. They made us all proud. We couldn't talk to them for a while. We had to wait till their investigations were over on the shooting. But once we did, Mike was very open with us. He was transparent also. So 2 studs, 2 heroes doing out there.
And this is a textbook case of which we're going to end up with one of our final episodes. We're going to talk about another active shooter, but the textbook case of how you respond to the stuff and how you do it. And again, if you're down there in Uvalde, some of this, like I said, you and I, we did a Patreon episode, I think, on that too. And it's kind of like we didn't hold back. It's like the difference in night and day. Too many people died because of inaction. And I think that's criminal. But anyway, I don't want to get off on a rant here on our last episode here. So we took a break over Christmas after that, and we come back. And the first episode we had recorded earlier, but we were kind of also in a holding pattern because of the actor strike. But it's your buddy, Boyd Holbrook, came on. And I think you've got something you may be working out with him as well.
Yeah, Boyd is... he's the actor that played me in Narcos. His career has just blown up since Narcos. When we interviewed him, he was going to play a prisoner that was on a hunger strike.
He looked like he was he could have played in a World War II concentration camp survivor movie too. He was looking mighty gaunt.
Oh yeah, he sent us a picture, and he's doing it through a nutrition, so he's healthy. But it did take quite a while to get him on the show. He and I have stayed in touch, and I've got an idea that I may try out here for introducing Game of Crimes once I'm doing this thing solo, just because I need all the help I can get. And I'm thinking about having a guest, do an introduction for me. So I texted Boyd and I said, "Hey brother, I got an idea here," and I spelled the idea out to him. And in no time at all, he was out on set filming somewhere. He says, "Hey, I'm away from home, but let's do this. Whatever you need, you got it." So I I scripted it out for him and everything, and we'll see you.
Well, and we take credit for that because it was us pushing Boyd to, hey, in fact, it came from us being at the Southern California Gang Conference, and we were telling Jonathan Bernthal, said, hey, Boyd's kind of dogging us. So he had you take a picture, and you flipped Boyd off, both of you guys did, and said, get your ass in the game. And then Boyd gets back to you right away. Oh, I'm sorry, let's schedule this. And we got her scheduled.
Yeah, but he's, he was in the most recent Indiana Jones movie.
The Dial of Destiny. Very much so. But again, we take credit because we helped him get set up with his podcasting stuff.
Yep.
And we were his first interview.
Walking through it.
That's okay. We got some good FaceTime, quality time with him the day before, but we got him all set up, and he is quite the consummate actor, especially with his voice skills as well as his acting. So speaking of billions and billions of dollars, then we end up talking to Rich Reinhardt, another one of a former, he started Border Patrol, DEA, and then landed at IRS, but it doesn't sound sexy until you realize the size of the scam and the fact that one of the key people probably is dead, went missing. A $4 billion scam called OneCoin. $4 billion.
Not million, billion.
Billion.
And if you remember, he was recommended to us by one of our regular listeners, Carla Nastasi, who's an IRS agent. And thank you again, Carla, for the recommendation. In fact, Carla was bringing Javier and I up to New Jersey to speak in June, at a university just outside of Newark there. But listening to Rich talk, and if you go back and listen to the interview, you'll hear us talking to him about penny stocks, because he's talking about how that's such a scam. I got to tell you, when I first got started in the stock market, I lost, it wasn't a significant amount of money compared to today's dollars. But when you don't have a lot and you lose, $1,000 or $800, it was significant. It was money not back then, not realizing what a scam it was. So law enforcement.
Yeah, I can see your financial advice. Hey, here's a penny stock. It's going to go through the roof.
We're 2 cents tomorrow.
It's a fireworks factory. Literally went through the roof, blew up all the inventory. Your stock's worthless now. All right. Well, then we get into another kind of Keith Morrison. Matt Barden and the curious case of the concrete casket and the cartel. How many times do you find a concrete casket in the middle of the frickin' desert?
Like never. Matt
600 pounds of concrete.
Yeah. And one of the finds they had a head in it. The other part had the rest of the body in it. That was crazy. That's one of the craziest cases I've ever heard. But I met Matt when he was an Orlando police officer. He was a task force officer with DEA, and I was stationed in North Carolina and was working a case with a local detective and a state bureau agent. And we traced the source of supply for the cocaine coming to North Carolina through, it was a group of Haitians that were based out of Orlando. So if you listen to that interview, you'll hear about some guys actually get kicked out of a Hooters. You don't hear that very often. I'm telling you, they were good guys.
You got to work really hard to get kicked out of a Hooters.
And we didn't do anything wrong. I mean, it's just, we were having fun, but you got to listen to the episode to find out more about that. But
by the way, I'm giving a shout out again to Matt, because Matt has helped me navigate Walmart and made some key introductions. So saluting you again there, Matt the Stud Barden. Now we get into another 4-part episode, and this still to this day constitutes, I believe, the only public interview Ken Mead has given about the investigation into the Route 91 Harvest Festival, massacre that happened. Mm-hmm. And what was really going on behind it. And I have to tell you, I was watching some shit fly through on X, formerly known as Twitter, and some of these people are going, well, I'm a trained weapons expert, and this was a machine gun, blah, blah, blah. And I really engage on that stuff, but I kind of like, almost like Sean, Sticks Larkin, hey, fuck Stick. Hey, go listen to this episode. And again, get the real facts. There was no machine gun. There were no second shooters. There was no shooter on the grassy knoll. None of this stuff. Here's the guy who basically helped lead the investigation. I said led the investigation. He said, hey, being a team player, said, no, I helped lead it. But he realized what his role was. And it was not to go, they had so many people down there at the shooting. He said, somebody needs to start getting organized. Somebody needs to start doing the paperwork on this, start doing the warrants and everything. So Ken was part and parcel of that, ended up interviewing the shooter's girlfriend, in-depth stuff. I mean, this is the real story. If you want to know what actually happened in Las Vegas, Ken Mead, he's the one that has the facts, not these wannabe armchair detectives who sit on Twitter and X and Instagram and pontificate. That's why I'm so done with people like that. If you start doing bullshit like that, like, well, 9/11 really happened and we didn't land on the moon, that's insta-block. I'm done with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and Ken at the time was had been assigned to the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. We call them JTTFs. So he had the background. He was the perfect person, and he realized at the beginning there's going to be hundreds of cops responding down there. What is one more cop going to do on site? He knew the shit was getting ready to hit the fan, and somebody needed to be in there, coordinate everything, calling the shots, getting everything organized, and he stepped up to the plate. And then at the end of his interview, just before he retires, and we're talking like 4 days before he retired, they had the shootings at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, UNLV out there. And what did he do? He didn't stand back and watch. He got in his car and he went out to the site. Holy cow. I mean, he said it's a good thing I didn't get shot because if I'd have gotten killed, my family would have.
Yeah. Dug you up, shot your ass, and buried you back.
And that's another 4-parter. We did 2 weeks on.
Yeah, because when we started recording, it was like, no, this is just keep going. We weren't even scratching the surface after 2 hours. So,
well, and that we were introduced to him. We were introduced to Ken by a retired Vegas police officer. It's a buddy of mine, Bruce Gentner, who I'm going to try and get Bruce on here at some point. He's agreed to come on. It's just the list is so long. But I asked Bruce. I said, "Hey, brother, you know anybody that was involved in the Mandalay Bay shooting?" He said, "Yeah, I know the lead investigator. Happens to be my cousin." Well, 2 degrees of
dang. Well, then we go on to 132. It's Julie Farnham. She was the Assistant Director of Intelligence for the United States Capitol Police on January 6th. And she wrote a book. And, Murph, I wanted to keep – it was a challenge because when we were doing this interview, I didn't want to dive into conspiracy theories. I didn't want to get it – because her book is called An Insider's Account of the January 6th Insurrection, which it's not an insurrection, and the Future of Right-Wing Extremism. Yeah, this goes back to a lot of factual misstatements about January 6th. No police officers were killed, not a single one, but yet you've got people out there foisting this bullshit narrative that 4 police officers were killed. Nobody was killed. Now, one of them died, but the autopsy showed it had nothing to do with what happened on January 6th. Ashley Babbitt's the only person that was shot and killed on that day. Now, we're not talking about giving people a free pass, but words mean things. It was instructive just to hear what her inside view was, the lack of intelligence they were getting from the FBI. One of my buddies is a 05 inside one of the commands, let's say inside DOD, who had direct responsibility for troops that would have been called out that day. And he knows the real deal, and he can't go public because he's still a serving officer. But it's not what you're hearing about in the public. A lot of things. But what I liked about her book, though, we tried to stay away from the politics. I didn't want to make this political, but it was instructive to look at what was the process like, how were they looking at threats, and how difficult of a job was it. But I was shocked by the fact is that they were getting no intel from. I shouldn't say I was shocked, but the Bureau wasn't sharing any intelligence with them.
Well, and if you remember when she first got there to the Capitol Police Department, their intel division was extremely antiquated.
Yep.
And she met just tons of resistance. The good old boy network. Oh, what's this woman going to do? Coming in here telling us what to do. And I got to be honest. I told this on the interview, and I'll say it again, that when I started reading her book, I was thinking this is just going to be a poor, pitiful me book. But as I got on into it, especially towards the end, and if you listen to this episode, I called out the section where she came up with 10 suggestions. And you know what? I agreed with everything that woman said. You can't live in the Stone Ages and expect to address modern day crime.
Yep.
Criminals have more money than law enforcement does, than the government does. They're quicker to change their tactics. They'll employ the latest technology out there, whereas we have to wait for the next year's budget and approval, and then you got to order equipment, and then there's the lowest bidder gets the contract. Equipment might suck, and it's just so many challenges to be a good guy. So I actually have to apologize to Julie for thinking bad about her to start with.
Yeah. Well, it all goes back to, I remember when I was a state trooper, our Kansas State Troopers Association was, the state was looking at how they do procurement, and everything, like you say, Murph, used to be low bid, just give me low bid, right? Which we tried to go to a best bid approach, take all the factors in, but get the best bid. And the winning argument was done by one of the reps on the Kansas State Troopers, because one of the, they were at a hearing, and one of the state senators, I think it was her son-in-law or might have been a nephew, but was a state trooper. And what won the day kind of helped sway the other votes. He looked at her and said, "Let me ask you, Senator, Would you feel comfortable knowing that your nephew, or son-in-law is out there being protected by body armor that came from the lowest bid or the best bid?
We used to joke about it, but the vest I'm putting on came from the
Low bid.
lowest bid.
Low bid. There's a reason.
One time I used to run the mobile enforcement team in the Atlanta Field Division for DEA, and we had our own budget. And if you plan your budget right, you can always end up with a little leftover that you can get better equipment. And so that's what my guys did. I would let them do all the research, and they would bring me proposals, and we got upgraded body armor. I mean, my guys were getting at least one shooting a year, and I ran the team for 2.5 years. So I was going to do everything I could to get them the best protection. They had the chest plates, they had the side plates. I can't imagine getting shot in a groin plate because it's still going to hurt. We had the throat coverage. We had
and when the majority of government money is spent, Murph? From September 1st to September 30th. Got to get it in before the end of the fiscal year.
I can remember times they would come in and, at like mid-September and like, all right, guys, who's got informants need to be paid? We've got, I don't know, $40,000 left over. We're not giving it back.
Yeah. Well, and so my work on Plan Columbia came as a result of the government coming out. The marshals actually was running this part of the program, came to us. I was over at Unisys at the time, said, hey, we need you guys to bid on this. We've got some money to spend. So, put in a proposal. It's for Plan Columbia. So we do real quick. We write a proposal, get it back to them. They go, yeah, your proposal's close, but we think you could actually add some extra in this area. They finally came back and they said, look, if it came in at $6.1 million, we think that would be the winning bid.
Whoa.
6.1 million. And guess what? Few months later, I'm in Bogota, Colombia, working on Plan Colombia.
What goes on in the government? We used to say, if the public only knew.
If they only knew. Yes, they are. Well, hey, speaking of if they only knew, we learned a lot from our next guest, Bob Zaharashevitz, like Manischewitz, but Zach Zaharashevitz. And this was interesting because he is a repeat customer too. We talked with him.
Yeah.
And it was a long time ago. Then we talked about Victor Boot, Operation Relentless. And then we did a Patreon episode on the update on Victor Boot when he was released for Brittany Griner, which, as you can tell from Rob, his episode didn't go over well because Victor Boot is a stone cold killer, no matter what people think. Anybody who arms and is responsible for the death of 6 million people in the African continent. But anyway. But he comes back to us with, and we actually had to correct each other ourselves. I started talking about Operation Cassandra. He said, no, Project Cassandra, because project and operation mean different things in DEA. But this one was going after Hezbollah, a designated terrorist organization, and he was working with Mossad. This was a cool case.
Yeah, very. I wasn't even aware of all this. And he did this when he was working at DEA Special Operations Division. I used to be I was a staff coordinator and then an assistant special agent in charge there, and then the executive assistant to the SAC, Derek Maltz. And this case got started before I left, but I wasn't even aware of it. So I had no idea that we were doing. I think it's pretty cool.
Well, that's Murph because nobody knew you worked there. I mean, I can tell 2 guests right now that had no idea who you were. Only because you reached out and said, remember me, Zach? Here's a picture of us together. Oh, I remember now.
Yeah.
But Zach, very interesting. And this was the only thing that we said that could stop Project Cassandra wasn't the operation itself. It was politics. Politics got in the way and ruined what would have been, I think, more significant accomplishments in this program. But once again, Zach's storytelling, diving into the stuff, his mastery of the facts was just, this is why we have these episodes, because they know their shit, and he definitely knows his shit.
Yeah, Zach reminds me of Javier and the point that they're both like walking encyclopedias. Their recall is unbelievable. I don't have that ability. I can remember the high-arching facts of a case, but getting down in the weeds and
well, here's something I didn't have the ability either to do. Episode 134. How do you make a joke with a burn victim survivor, and especially a soldier who survived an IED exploding under their Humvee? They've lost an arm, their face is burned. And he wants to tell crispy jokes, and you're going, okay, am I allowed to laugh? What do I do here? I have no playbook for this. What do I do? Bobby Henline.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because remember he told us, he said when he does a comedy show, he gives people permission to laugh because everybody, wants to, I don't want to say feel sorry, but, that I guess you do. Your heart bleeds for somebody that's been through this, burned over 40% of his body. He told us his head was burned all the way down to the skull. Holy cow. And this was a recommendation by one of our Game of Crimes fan page members, Tracy Jacobs. So, Tracy, thank you very much. Bobby's hilarious. I've stayed in touch with him, and you may have too, Morgan. Since then, he's founded Bravo 748, which is a group that helps other veterans that are suffering from PTSD and injuries. And he also has a Law Enforcement Speakers Bureau. So the guy's got it going, man. He's on Instagram all the time. He posts some of the funniest sayings on there.
And he's called the Well Done Comedian. That tells you everything you need to know.
What a sense of humor, man. You talk about somebody who's got a grip on life. And
yeah. Chicken shit. You can make chicken salad out of chicken shit. I say, don't tell Golden Corral that. It may taste funny. All right, or Waffle House. All right. Episode 135. This was somebody I've known for a couple of years. Well, I've known tangentially for a couple of years. She was a speaker at one of the lunches I went to. I belong to the Association of Former Intelligence Officers. It's called AFIO, and her husband was the inspiration for the movie Argo, the real operation to get the American hostages out of Iran. But Jonna Mendez, in her own right, she has had what a interesting career with CIA. She ended up retiring as chief of disguise after starting as a, quote, contract wife. And don't read into it. It's not like, hey, can I rent, can we contract with you for 6 hours? No, it was called a contract wife. And she explains what it means in CIA parlance. But her book, In True Face, was about her journey through the CIA. But her stories were just fascinating. And I got to go out to her book signing in Middleburg. And I brought her out something which she didn't have before. I brought her the KGB challenge coin and also Operation Jawbreaker challenge coin. And I was able to give that to her, when I met up with her out there. So fascinating woman. And just, I enjoyed and she even enjoyed the episode. She said, I didn't know about it. This was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, and we actually got the recommendation for Jonna from our Speakers Bureau agent, David Buchalter. So thank you, David. Shout out to you, brother. Appreciate everything you do for us. And her husband, Tony, had written the book. And one of the chapters was about Argo, and I reached out to Tony. And, well, you know what? Just go listen to the episode because you'll hear the whole story. I don't want to repeat it for you. But this was very entertaining. And what I really loved is when she came up with the concept of that, I forget what you call it, where you put that face mask on so nobody knows who you are, and went and met the president. And the president didn't know who she was. That's pretty cool.
They were working with Hollywood at that time, on prosthetics and stuff like that. But it's, basically it's the, there was a silver bullet package, and some other stuff too. And there was it's not classified anymore, I don't think. I think I put the code name for it in there, but in any event, the masking technology was so good it fooled the president, who used to be the director of Central Intelligence. George H.W. Bush used to be DCI. And she's standing in there, and when she exposed it and showed it to him, blew him away. It's kind of like, anyway, thank you for serving our country there, Jonna Mendez. We go from Jonna to June, and June was Sandy Salvato threw down the gauntlet because you were into the doghouse, Murph, for recommending Miami Vice as one of the movies we review on Patreon, which was probably our greatest stinker of all time on movie reviews.
Oh, my gosh. I haven't told you, but I actually spoke to Sandy this past week. Carlo Nastasi, that's hosting us for a speaking event, has actually extended an invitation to Sandy and her husband to come as guests. So, and I worry about Miami Vice. She's like, it's forgotten. Don't worry about it. It was terrible.
But because of that, we ended up talking with the son, which came out. We talked with him first, but his episode came out second because we were able to use him to get to June Hawkins.
Yeah.
The real deal behind Griselda, another installment of the Narcos kind of series on Netflix.
Yeah, the cool thing about it, and the connection is, the creator of Narcos is Eric Newman. He's the executive producer, and the creator and executive producer of Griselda is Eric Newman. So he's kind of continuing on.
Yeah.
So it's really cool that it worked out like that. June, here's a lady going into a man's world. You got to listen to her story. it's funny to listen. It's so much funnier when she tells it than when we say it. Some of the things that the guys would try to pull on her, and she just took it all in stride. And she made it real plain. Look, I'm not dating any of you guys. I got my mom living in my house. I've got a child I'm responsible for. I'm going to be a responsible person. And she was, and she did all the work.
Tough woman.
An honor to have her on the show.
But you'll have to listen to the part she talks about the leather chair.
It'll be so much fun when you hear it from her.
We don't want to go into it. You got to hear it from her. But if you wanted to know what she dealt with and how good she gave it back and got you know what too, Murph, a lot of times you get respect by not how well you take the shit, but how well you can give it back to them and not let it affect you. And it's like, all right, you're a player. Let's go. You're on my team.
Right.
All right. So 137 was her son, Eric Reynolds, who we wanted to get. He didn't give us the dirt we wanted. We wanted some additional stories on June, but he was too afraid because he's afraid he'd get his ass beat again for acting out, which he did as a kid, which eventually led him into law enforcement and led him into getting shot in the line of duty, which changed his life, obviously.
Yeah, he had to kill the man that shot him, rightfully so. When you listen to the interview, you'll hear how he relives that day and still gets emotional about it. Eric is retired now. Digging down with him, he has so many different stories. Now he's getting ready to return to those 23andMe or whatever they call it, those companies.
Yep, Ancestry.
Comes back and finds out he's got a long lost brother that even his dad didn't know of, who was also a cop in Florida, up here in Orange County where I live. So that in itself, and then, so what's he doing now? He has started a group called Cops and Campers. Listen to the story to find out more about it, but it's basically offering assistance to those with PTSD. He's got Keto 5.0, which is, he's a licensed nutritionist now, so trying to help him, help first responders and anybody else that wants to live a healthier life. The guy he's like a...
he's funny like too. Yeah, he's funny too, and you can tell too he's living the life. You can tell he's slimmed down from his pictures when he was in law enforcement to where he is now. He looks very healthy. Got that long ass, hippie hair going too. So, yeah. But he's earned it. So just don't, whatever you do, Eric, I'm telling you, you can put it in a ponytail, but if you put it in a man bun, I'm unfollowing you on Facebook. No man buns. 5-0. It's 5-0. It's the 5-0. Hey, so this next one, episode 138, was somebody I tracked down because this is something I was made aware of a few years ago, but it was an organization that didn't go out and talk about it. It's very similar to Special Mission Unit Delta when we had Kevin Holland on. Now, there's no Delta. There's Special Mission Unit Delta, but, it's like the worst kept secret. Well, this thing was, and as we got to talking, Murph, when we were talking, you were using a capability back on Pablo called CentraSpike, which CentraSpike is one of the names that's been given to the First Capabilities Information Group, the intelligence support activity. Well, now they're called the activity or the unit. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys we got on here, I reached out to the author of the book, was able to get her to introduce me to this guy, Adam Gamal, which is not his real name, but it's the one he uses because he was even in disguise with us on the podcast. But here's a guy who came over, didn't speak a lick of English, immigrated from Egypt the right way, filled out his paperwork, started working, joined the military, and he becomes an elite operator. And a lot of people to this day still don't know when you say the activity, even inside the military, they go, yeah, what are you talking about?
Yeah. And when he retired, he was a command sergeant major of that unit. That, other than being the ranking enlisted person, I can't remember how it works. That's about the highest you can go without becoming an officer in the military. So this guy has worked up, learned English. You talk about an American success story. That's what Adam's story is. Here's a guy coming over as a Muslim, Egyptian Muslim. He gives a good explanation on a lot of things, like pulling out of Afghanistan, the mistakes that were made by not installing infrastructure and setting them up to succeed. It's a very educational interview, but it makes you very proud that people are willing to put their lives at danger like that. He starts the book off by talking about calling in an airstrike. And when they launched the missiles, a 90-minute travel time? It was more than an hour.
It was a long time because they're launching them from way out there. It might have been
4 or 5 hours. It was a long, long time. But he has to stay on target to make sure And he has the call to call off the mission, which they could destroy those missiles in flight if the target left. But that's the extent that the United States is willing to go to.
And you and I ended up talking with him later about what to do with his book. And Murph, he took my advice, so I introduced him to Amy Neodashek, which is her new name now. She's got a website design service called Anchor Design, which she helped design my personal site, the Game of Crimes one. She's got a whole big thing she's doing for Adam. So Adam will have a new site out shortly, top notch. Yeah, so you'll see it there. So anyways, again, this is us saluting you. So the next one is the guy that I met when I went to Mark Greeny's book signing, was held down at a restaurant in Alexandria, and then ended up running to him. And it's like, oh, we got to get you on the podcast. And as we found out, I think that, to your credit, Murph, this guy actually remembered you.
He did. And this is the guy I was referring to earlier about agents that retire and go into writing. Jeff Higgins is who we're talking about. Jeff's a retired DE agent. His wife owns a restaurant in Alexandria, Virginia called Elaine's. We'll give her a shout out for that. But the guy has written, I don't know how many books and articles, and that's what he's doing full time now. And then at his wife's restaurant, once a night or once a week, he hosts a writer to come in, and he does.
But his stories about stopping an IED, a suicide bomber over there. You talk about balls of brass, balls of steel. And he's first guy on the ground. They're establishing the office over there, and the work that they're doing. Yeah, in Kabul, wherever. I mean, everything's a potential target over there. Every time you walk out, you're being targeted, and so he lives like that for years. But as I say, doing the Lord's work and trying to make that country safer. But some of the stuff he got involved with, it's like, that's why this one was a 4-part series. We get talking. It's like, no, keep talking. You want me to stop? Nope. This is like, once you get a suspect confessing, just let him keep talking. Just keep talking, brother. Admit to it all. Get it out of your system.
And all the ones that we've done, the 2-parters, which, leads to 4 episodes. Well, it's all 1 episode, but there's 4 parts. All of them have been worthy in my book. I mean,
that's because nobody knew you worked at DEA, and they wouldn't invite you to meetings because nobody knew you existed. Hey, who's this guy Murphy? What's he doing in my meeting?
Barton remembered me. Thank you, Matt.
Only because we paid him beforehand. Yeah. Now, but this next one I'll let you do, Murph, because you ran into him at your retreat that you did.
I did, actually, the next 2. So at the Military Appreciation Weekend I went to that Core Medical Group sponsored in Beaufort, South Carolina, Sid Gordon and Mel Chansey. Give them a shout out. One of the speakers was this big guy, gets up on stage. I mean, a big man. And he is as nervous as anybody I've ever seen in front of people. His name's Tim Matson. He was a police officer, SWAT member with Pittsburgh Police Department. He was with the team. If you remember the Tree of Life synagogue shooting, where 11 people were killed, I think. A single gunman goes in. And Tim was the lead on their SWAT team, and as they're doing their search, they know the guy's in there, and once they get to the
12 times, 7 times. I think the vest and some of his ballistic stuff caught 5 of it, and 7 of them penetrated his body.
One of those being through the head. So I met him. I spoke to him afterwards. He said that was the first time he'd ever spoken in front of people, and I asked him. I said, "Well, I've got this podcast I co-host with a friend of mine. Would you consider coming on?" And he did, a fantastic interview. So much so that I told him if opportunities, a lot of people, like the conference I went to, Hummer and I were at this past week, they're always looking for speakers. And so we tell them, hey, if you're looking for speakers, call us, because we know a lot of people in the speaking field, and we'll certainly make referrals. And so I'm just ready to get Tim some business. We did the same thing with John Mattingly. So great story, but the reason you need to listen to Tim's story is to find out. Well,
there's a common thread between this story and the next one about what you do to people who have put their bodies, their lives on the line, and how they get treated. It's despicable.
Oh, it's unbelievable. So episode 141, because I met Mario at the same Military Appreciation Weekend. He was not a speaker, but people I know that were there said, hey, Murph, you need to go talk to this guy. So I did. Mario's as friendly and as open as they come. Just a very cordial individual, former Detroit police officer, a couple years on the job. He and two other officers stop a car. Long story short, the car backs up over one officer, shoot at, and then gets out and starts shooting at the cops. Mario gets hit, returns fire. The shooter is able to escape. Is taken down later. But then the real story is what happened afterwards. Because Mario, these type of jobs aren't for everyone. And some people don't want anything else to do with law enforcement, and that's fine. We started a thing in DEA when people are being interviewed as potential candidates to become an agent. One of the questions that you ask them is, do you understand you're going to carry a weapon and you may be required to shoot somebody in the line of duty? Because believe it or not, people don't know that. Well, so anyway, Mario chose not to do it, but then his case gets adjudicated later on. And then the jury, they don't tell him about it until it's too late. He can't make it to, he's living in another state now, doing another job. He can't get up there for the trial. And even though they got it on body cam, they find the shooter innocent. What the hell?
The body cam shows the body cam shows the guy backing up into him, getting out with the gun, firing shots. They return fire. Guy's a convicted felon. He's not a contributing member of society. And they not only do that, but they I think they intentionally submarine this case because they know he's down there. If they wanted him back, and he should have been back because he's a victim. He's entitled to be treated as a victim. Should have paid for his travel. Should have subpoenaed him early on. Say, we're calling you as a witness. Need to be here. Then here's your plane ticket and stuff. It's like the day before they go, hey, look, if you can make it back, that's good. If not, whatever. It's
just
like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. I mean, didn't even follow appropriate procedures for collecting evidence, the whole ball of wax. So you need to listen to that story. We call shame on Detroit police as well as Pittsburgh police on those two episodes.
Shouldn't have happened. 142. So, hey, guys. So it has been fun doing this, but it's time to pass the baton, as they say, and still be there in the background, whatever it takes to get Murph up and running, make sure he gets episodes out, and stuff. We're going to do that, but I'll keep you apprised, and I'd love to come back as a guest at some point in the future when the book is out or the project is out and up and running, and we're making some cases. Got a partnership going with U.S. Marshals, the Chesterfield County Police, working to get the Virginia State Police more on board. But hey, we just finished testing it, making a couple fixes and stuff. And this thing, we're going to be launching this like in the next week. This is all going to go live, and we're going to start adding cases to the system. So that is going to consume a lot of my time, but I got to tell you, it has been fun doing this. And I go back and I think about all the episodes that we did and the people we talked to. It's humbling to know that you were in the presence of the people who did a lot of the stuff. And that starts with you and Javi doing what you guys did as our first kickoff episode and working all our way through up until this last one with Mario. I mean, I go back and I think about all the people we've talked to, and it's like, if you ever want to have a humbling experience, go look through the list of what people, if you think you're having a bad day, go look through the list and see what other people have gone through. Joe Piersante getting shot through the head.
Absolutely. It's so motivational. This has been a hoot. I'll be real honest with you. I'm really nervous about taking this on solo without Morgan.
You're going to be fine.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being there as backup. And we've already done a couple sessions where we go sharing screen, trying to show me which buttons to push and sharing all the information he's done. He's always taken care of all the tech side, the social media, the postings, everything tech related to this show. So we're going to see how this works. I'm trying to learn how the platform works. I'm going to practice on editing today to see if I can make it work. Intros, outros. I'm not sure how everything's going to go yet, but hopefully it's not going to be too much different. I guarantee you Morgan will be a repeat guest on here. Every time that something significant goes on, he has gone out of his way to educate me, to get me involved in things. Worked out. I mean, the success of Game of Crimes, I never expected this. There's and please don't anybody think there's hard feelings between me and Morgan. There's not. The man has. It's like I told Sandy. In law enforcement, we typically always put the job first, and our families come second. There are times when you've got to put your family first and do what's going on. Do what's necessary for your family. But then when you've got all these other irons in the fire, at some point you got. We're not getting younger. Hell, we're getting older here. So We're leaving as best friends. We will continue to be best friends.
Yep. Well, I'm going to come down and check in on you. I'm coming down to do a keynote for the Independent Armored Car Operators Association of America in Orlando in June. So I'm going to swing by and kick you in your remaining good knee and see how things go.
Stay if you need it.
Well, I want to go see Big Al though. We got to go sit out on the back deck and wait for Big Al.
Hey, we'll smoke a cigar and I don't know if I've got anything. I've got some alcohol here. You can see if there's anything gourmet beer.
I'm not coming. I'll bring my own. I'll stop by a store and get my own. That's okay.
I think those out in the garage or something.
No, are you kidding me? Man, we'll give them to some needy young DEA agent who doesn't have the budget for booze. So donate that to them. So hey, but look, guys, we'll bring this to a close. But again, I'm not going away. Just going to take a different role. But again, always going to support Murph and what he's doing, continuing the story. As they say, Charlie might continue the mission. This has always been the mission of Game of Crimes. It has been an honor working with you, serving the interest. And by the way, we don't talk about our numbers, but I will tell you is that between where we were on Art 19 and Audio Boom, over these years, we're in the millions of downloads. But it's a tough business because even though we're in the millions of downloads, guess what? We're in the top 0.5% of all podcasts in the world. The money's really made at the top 0.1%. That's where it's like the difference between a pro and an amateur in golf is only like 2 strokes, 1.8 strokes. Not that big of a gap, but it's huge in terms of earnings. So, but it wasn't about the money, because if it was the money, we would have quit after the first year. It's kind of like, we're putting a lot of time into this. People at McDonald's make more than we. Never about the money. Was always about the stories.
Yeah, it is. This is all about promoting law enforcement, military, and first responders in the most positive light. You know what? We might even.
You must be really scraping the bottom. Well, but the nice thing about interviewing firemen, they have all sorts of time on their hand. They'll be sitting in their lazy boy watching TV and eating something, and you'll be able to interview them.
Well, you got to catch them between
That's
bedtime.
Right, catch them.
So,
so
love
for
you first responders. Just kidding.
Yeah. But so for one last time, let me say thank you guys once again for playing the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the original, never to be duplicated, and continued success for Murph, Game of Crimes.
Hey everyone, Murph here. Hope you enjoyed our review of the past 41 episodes of Game of Crimes. Believe me, I'm not happy that Morgan is moving on, but I do understand why, and I hope you guys do also. We do wish him continued success in his other endeavors, and you can expect to see him back here on Game of Crimes in the future. I'm telling you, he's like a bad penny. He'll keep coming back. But listen up. That doesn't mean the show's going anywhere. Each week, I plan to continue bringing some of the greatest stories of heroism, dedication, sacrifice, and commitment from our law enforcement professionals, military veterans, first responders, and yes, even more former bad guys. The next episodes you hear, they'll be coming from Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. A little corny, but hey, it sounds pretty good. Now, I'm still learning how to record and edit these shows, so you guys got to bear with me while this old dog tries to learn some new tricks. Morgan always handled this part of the show, but you know what? I figure if a trooper can do it, then anyone can do it, right? Fortunately, he is holding my hand as I attack this new challenge. You may not hear the best quality in the first new episodes, but I promise you I'll continue to improve with each show. Also, you may hear a few changes in upcoming episodes. And listen, I expect to hear your feedback. I'm dedicated to promoting our heroes, but I also want to provide you with the content that you find interesting and want to hear. So head on over to Apple, Spotify, hit those 5 stars like Morgan used to say. You can actually leave comments on Spotify as well, so do that. Let me know what you think about the show, any suggestions for improvement, other guests, or topics to cover. Also, head over to gameofcrimespodcast.com. That's where you'll find more information about the show, all the episodes. That's where you can find out about the books that are written by our guests on the show also. Follow us on that thing they call social media. I got to come up with a new line for that because that's what Morgan always said. But on X, which is formerly Twitter, at Game of Crimes. On Facebook and Instagram at Game of Crimes Podcast. Also on Facebook, type in Game of Crimes fan page run by our favorite mafia queen, Sandy Salvato. She rules with the iron fist with the velvet glove. You'll have to answer a few questions to gain admittance into that inner sanctum, but the others in the group are fantastic. Some of their posts and comments, they're just downright hilarious. We have a lot of fun over there. I do plan to continue with Patreon, but it's on hold for now until I can catch my breath. Also, my lovely wife, Connie, will be assisting me with merchandise soon, so you can expect to see some really cool Game of Crimes stuff coming out. Now, don't be bashful. Tell your friends about Game of Crimes. Help spread the word about the best weekly true crime podcast available. That's Game of Crimes, right? Lastly, and I mean this with all sincerity, I want to thank you guys for continuing to support Game of Crimes, for always being there. Thank you for your comments. Please keep them coming, good or bad. Now, I can't imagine there'll be any bad comments since we got rid of Morgan. Hey, but you never know. Finally, thanks for joining me in the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes. See y'all next time.